All right, folks, episode 36 of Biomassed is now live and streaming, and we've got a pretty cool show for you tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about vehicles, which is one of my most favorite topics when I'm riding around with Pokey because it's his most favorite topic, and it's one of Zell's least favorite topics. So in order to kind of balance out the feng shui of the show, we had to bring on some folks that'll give us a little bit different perspective because otherwise we'll just turn into this family hating each other at Christmas kind of thing. A lot of people call it motherfucker. It'll be awesome. So we'll get into a little bit of a discussion about some vehicles, and we're going to talk a little bit about a topic that's kind of near and dear to my heart, which is going to be updating the skill tree. And there's obviously been no announcements on that one. It's literally just something that periodically people ask, and it really dovetails well with the vehicle rework discussion, and I think we'll see why at some point. After that, we may talk a little bit about the community feedback board, the Trello board, where you can submit some ideas and let some pseudo luminaries on the Dust community kind of give you a keep it or coast it vote on your idea. And I think that'll give us enough red meat for tonight because we're obviously going to have 2 or 3 like rabbits we got to chase down because that happens every show. And at some point somebody says something stupid, then we're going to dogpile on that one. And that's just how these kind of things go. So without further ado, what we're going to do is get started with some intros. We'll go from top to bottom in the list. So Merc, you're up, brother.
Hey, I'm Merc, mainly a Godin Thekiller, a recovering bitterwit, and I am your overlord.
Well played, sir. And Godin?
Hello, I am Godin Thekiller, kind of a free roamer. I am also your overlord. Love.
This no good will come of this by the end of the show. I can already see that. Iron Wolf.
This is Iron Wolf Saber from CPM 0 and 1, and I'm your underling.
Confirmed.
Kane Spero.
I'm Kane Spero. I am a former member of CPM 0 and just all-around Dust player these days.
And he is a former overlord with designs on being a minion.
Can you be a former member of CPM? I think there's only one former CPM 0 because you're still technically a CPM 0. You're just not seated anymore, like doing anything.
I guess
your language choice was very odd.
Mind blown.
Anyways,
you're still a CPM 0.
Well, I'm Pokey Draven from OSG Planetary Operations and co-host here on Biomassed.
Okay, and Soraya?
I'm Soraya Zell, a CPM 1 member, a co-host here on Biomassed, and, a player in the somewhat of a leader in Top End.
All right. Well, I am Jason Larison, and I'm a member of OSG Planetary Operations on Dust, and I fly with Agony Unleashed on the Eve side. And I am also one of the co-hosts here on Biomassed. I also have the privilege of, I guess, herding cats tonight. Oh, did you see what I did there? So we're gonna go ahead and get started. What I'm gonna do is turn this over to Zell and Iron Wolf for a quick CPM update. Well, quick is relative. It's however much time they need because they do, I think, have a little bit of news for us. And then we're gonna jump into the red meat topics. So Zell and Iron Wolf, take it away.
Yeah, well, by news, I mean, just the usual update on, what we've been up to. We had a meeting with CCP Rotati, and Frame was there for this last week, where we basically went over kind of closing, a few more of the details in on what would and what wouldn't be in the next release, and just kind of tidying up on some of that stuff is a bit more concrete now than it was last time we talked with them.
Some exciting tidbits that never happen.
Is that a really subtle way of saying nye, 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 nye?
I'm not trying to say it like that, but yeah.
I'm just messing with you. Although that is what you guys normally do.
Hey, it's stuff that I thought wasn't being considered, so if it happens, it happens, and that'll be a great win for everybody.
Now, just for the record, I'm always pleased when you guys have news of something that we had previously been told was not possible, or for whatever lack of understanding on our part, we didn't believe it was possible, and suddenly it is. But I'm just going to warn you, at some point in the near future, we're going to have to go full tinfoil for an entire episode and figure out why, pray tell, that is versus what we have been told many times before by CCP directly. And I'm all okay with the situation changing, but it's just one of those that's kind of interesting when you continue to hear development pushes in different directions, really unexpected and very pleasant directions, mind you. But it's just one of those that kind of just makes you scratch your head a little bit.
It's more. It has to do with like getting older and getting wiser and learning more about the game itself as you continue to develop it. That's where a lot of Fallout usually happens from. Also, a fresh set of eyes.
Yeah, that is definitely something that I think is no small thing when you get a group of people that are actually motivated to figure out how to get to yes. If you're in the business world or kind of the management world, you hear that a lot is like, how do you get to yes, not get to no? And that's where you normally find solutions to things, situations that we probably see in Dust a lot, or that you guys see way more than we do, from your seat in the CPM, is how do you get to yes? Like, how do you get that feature or an effect like that into the community, to make the game better, more healthy, that kind of stuff. So I think, I like I said, very happy with it, but it's always one that just scratches my head sometimes. You're like, where the hell did that shit come from? But
yeah, same reaction from me when I saw the roadmap.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's like impossible.
Well, we were joking about it in the Skype channel, but the first thing that everybody immediately said when that roadmap came out was, "So I guess that means Legion dead." The funny, and I think Zell,
like so dead.
Yeah, like Zell, I think you've caught this even in the Eve forums. Like people are like, "Yeah, like did they shut Dust off like a while ago or something?"
People keep having this impression of that. Yeah, it's driving me up a wall.
Yeah, but at half of it's because CCP doesn't actually tell anybody anything. So
CCP did a pretty good job of convincing people what Dust was shutting off with CCP with FanFest.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like I don't like some of my bros on the Eve side. They are like when they find out I do a weekly podcast about Dust. They're like, you mean that game that died like a year ago? Is like, is that a thing now? Or I was like, well, then you have to give them like the 5-minute, the elevator discussion on like, well, no, it didn't really die, but it was kind of hitting the back of the head and it fell, but then it crawled out of the room. It sawed its leg off, and you have to use all these. I mean, it's really, really bad. So you have to go through all these different descriptions of like why it's not dead, but somehow it's. I don't know. Peter Parker's blood got into it, and now shit's working well. So,
like the thing that I want to see them do is I think that some of the larger announcements, they have a Dust forum on the Eve forums, and they don't update it or post to it at all. And
yes.
I think
that's a great
I hate that thing.
And I think some of the big updates should get cross-posted over there by CCP so that people see the development in Dust.
You make a great point that's probably worthwhile in actually bringing up because, the community team is a unified community team. I mean, Falcon will occasionally post on our board for major issues, and Logibro, I think, it's still a component of the community team.
Falcon locked like 30 threads last week.
But you would think that it would be pretty easy for them to, at least for the releases, like for like major releases or something, post that onto the Eve side forums. That would actually probably be pretty useful. And frankly, I show my Eve side on this, but I would like them to I'd like them to at least alert players that, there's like major releases or changes in Eve periodically too. I mean, if they want to have a shared universe in terms of the game universe, it'd be kind of handy. But like I said, I don't know. As far as I know, which is not to say nearly as much as you guys, I think they're quite comfortable with building a very subtle but serious wall between Dust and Eve. I mean, you don't even need Eve ships to drop war barges in faction warfare anymore. So I'm not real sure that it's real high on their list to do, even though it'd be a pretty simple fix.
Yeah, speaking about that, just a little thing. Could they please bring that back? I mean, equipment spam isn't the problem anymore, so please.
Oh, you mean like the
orbitals, from Eve.
Oh yeah, that would.
I prefer
be
that
cool.
over,
what we have now. It was a topic brought up in discussions, and it's still being debated internally. But I'm leaning towards bringing it back.
Bring what back now?
War barge strikes in faction warfare.
Well, it's already back.
Eve strikes, not Warboard strikes.
Eve strikes are still in faction warfare as well.
Yeah, no,
I
but
mean-
the point is, like,
We
you
want
don't need
Warboard
to.
strikes.
There's
Yeah.
no percentage in you putting a ship in orbit and risking it when you could call the same warbard strike in.
I don't know. I'm
If
kind of
people
mixed
pay
on
me,
it.
I'll do it.
If you still, I think if there was a ideally, if they had it to where you could just keep the EMP and the large EMP strikes, I think that'd be fine, because that was to deal. Those things were specifically implemented to deal with up high equipment spam. I think taking away the ability to take down up high equipment spam completely, unless you have Eve, is not necessarily a good direction.
Fair point.
If you pay me enough, I'll do it for you.
Oh no, I'm
If
sure.
we could pay from dust, we could.
True.
You know, Luther Mandrix had a couple of pretty good ideas of, there's it's one of those where it's about what level of functionality you really want to have between Eve and Dust, and he had a pretty good idea about having, instead of a kinetic, like a lethal strike, you have like a scan, like a, it's like an Uber scanner. You can load that up, and you basically get full visibility on the map for like a minute or whatever. I thought that was actually a pretty legit idea, but I don't like in faction warfare and I don't think it works in PC, but in faction warfare and PC, I don't want like non-eavesdropped strikes like at all. And I also thought that the bandwidth thing with the Logis was one of the ways that they were really trying to cut down on that equipment spam thing, particularly up high. And if you're playing FAC War or PC, then you should have the capability to go deal with that shit.
I mean, the thing is, the equipment, bandwidth addressed maybe the numerical equipment spam, but not where that equipment actually gets location. It's in terms of where it gets placed. That's still an issue that's really not been directly addressed. Bandwidth, of course, kind of scratches the surface of that, but I don't think it completely solves the issue. And the EMP strike, the small EMP and the large EMP strike, kind of introduce a counterplay rather than doing something silly like making it where you can't put stuff up high at all.
Oh, that was
Well,
a terrible
the-
suggestion from the spammers.
The small AMP
No,
doesn't
no.
actually work, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree with
Just
that.
small over radius.
Absolutely not. It doesn't.
I will take a little bit of issue with you on that, Kane. Is that there was a built-in counterplay mechanic already. It was called this how you get up high and you put in links or you do whatever. You can get up there the same way that they did if you wanted. And I don't think anybody can bitch about how ineffective ADSs are. So I never saw. It was one of
Well,
those
there are
tactics
things
that
called
worked
forge
very well.
guns that tend
Yeah,
to show
sure.
that.
It becomes a race of who gets up high first.
Yeah, and you
then
know what?
railguns.
But that is kind of how it really works. I mean, you move to seize decisive terrain, no matter where that terrain is. So I'm with you. Like I never
The problem
thought it
is
was
that
that big of a deal.
that terrain is so ridiculously overpowering the surrounding area, and it's very difficult to take back.
Yeah. Sure. I totally see that. But again, like I said, it's just a different perspective. It's not right or wrong. Like I just never viewed it as that big of a deal. It's just another problem I had to work around in a match. So, before we get too spun around on that one, what I would like to do is kind of transition over to a discussion about the vehicle rework. Now, there's been a lot of talk about tanks in particular. We've had some iterations on dropships, but I think we're kind of in the mode where they really need to relook vehicles writ large. There's a discussion about what roles do you want to have in vehicles. There's a discussion about what effects weapons should have and how does that relate to roles. And then you get into what do you want to make a lav? Is that more than a free battle taxi for somebody with a BPO? Do you want, how do you make something worth putting SP into it? And then also you have the component that when you go through the vehicle skill tree and you look at all of the different things that you need to skill into that give you absolutely no in-game benefit, it's pretty staggering when you really kind of chart it up. So all of those things in conjunction with each other, I think creates a situation where I think everybody would like the vehicles to be touched on. I think I'm not sure how people feel about tier side. I'm going to let you guys get into that one in detail and kind of just shepherd the discussion a little bit, but because I am not a vehicle operator, I have put some SP into lavs because I really like hunting down tanks and dropships in a small lav in a lav with a small rail turret. That was fun for me for a while, but I have very little experience in tanks and dropships other than kind of the a trolley match or two or something. When we had like eight tanks on the deck at one time or something. So I'll turn this over to Pokey to kind of help set the stage for the discussion and let you guys kind of go at it. And the only time I'll probably chime in is the occasional, yeah, but how does this actually work if you're a dude on the ground? So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Pokey. So have at it, brother.
Sure thing. Yeah, you hit on a few good issues that you brought up. That is kind of on my overall arcing list of things that are wrong with vehicles. But I'll start from the beginning by saying that for those of you who don't remember, who weren't paying attention or just weren't around, some time ago, vehicles underwent a massive, we'll call it an overhaul, but it was more of a castration, where basically what they did is they removed a large number, like most of the modules available for vehicles. They reduced the number of slots they had and made the modules more powerful, which basically made the fitting of the vehicles very, very boring. I mean, like on an HAV, you've got maybe one, maybe two viable fits on a tank before you can't really modify it beyond that because you have to have the bare minimum to survive. They removed a lot of the vehicle variants, like the Enforcer tanks, Logistics LAV, Logistics Dropship. The only one that actually survived that cut was the Assault Dropship, which was pretty much demanded by the community. So that's good that stayed in there. But that was
they
the
were going
only
to cut
one
that originally, weren't they?
They were,
Yes.
and people bitched to high heaven, and they patched it. They patched it back in, which is good because specialized vehicles are interesting and make the game fun in the same way that specialized drop suits make the game interesting and fun. So I'm glad that survived, but unfortunately, these others were removed, and this is all under the pretense that we're taking them out to rework and rebalance them, and then we'll introduce them later, and that obviously never happened. So it's gotten to a point where the community is saying, okay, well, let's rework and rebalance these and get these back in the game, because the point of the matter is that if you're a vehicle pilot, it's extremely boring. Like, as you said, vehicles don't really have a defined role. LAVs are basically throwaway transport. Tanks are basically there to blow up other tanks and installations, but it doesn't really get much more interesting than that. Your assault dropship is probably the only one that actually really has a role of air superiority and picking people off of tops of roofs and whatnot. So that's good. And the normal dropship kind of has a transport role as well, but that's not really clearly defined because it lacks bonuses and whatnot. So, I mean, a lot of the key issues, like you said, is to bring those variants back, those modules back, properly balance them against the current meta and whatnot, get the slots back in the vehicles. The dropships aren't in a bad place, but the LAVs and the HAVs have a severe lack of slots. You can't do much at all with bidding on those. And define a role. I mean, everyone has their opinion of what vehicles should be, and I think that some of the existing roles that we see, like such as transport or anti-vehicle, I think those are good for roles, but there needs to be more than just that, and I think bringing in those variants is going to really help. But first of all, we have to define what those variants are going to be and what we want vehicles to do as a whole. I mean, my personal opinion is that I'd like to see vehicles as less of a roll around stomping people on the ground and blowing up other tanks, and more about it's a support role and it performs large scale support functions, such as like the logistics dropship having that built-in mobile CRU, and basically being like the ultimate spawn point that's flying around and dropping people off and whatnot. Or you've got your enforcer tank, which is like the hardcore anti-vehicle HAV, or your logistics LAV, which is rolling around and it can do mass repairing of infantry. It's stuff that you could do as an infantryman for support, but on a much larger scale because you're on a platform that can actually support that. So, I mean, that's my personal opinion. I mean, that's not necessarily the opinion of the community there, but I mean, just the idea that vehicles need to be more than just, I'm going to go blow shit up or I'm going to go drive from point A to B, and more about, what can I do that other people are doing, but on a different scale or maybe in a different way. And I think that if we can define those roles, that's going to be really key in making sure we get the vehicles where we need them to be and actually have them be fun again. Because like I said, it is boring as shit. I mean, vehicle piloting right now is just, it's not interesting. The fitting is boring. The gameplay is boring because all we do is roll around and blow shit up or just drive from point A to B, and it's not fun. So I mean, it's a discussion that's obviously heated because vehicles always kind of been a hot seat for AV versus
they've
vehicles.
They've been OP as crud.
Well, it depends on what time on the timeline you're looking at, but
it's been oscillating back and forth in a horrible way.
Yeah, it's never really gotten to a point where I felt like this is fun for both sides and is rewarding for both sides. It's usually one side stomping the other into oblivion, which is not fun because either it's boring or it's infuriating, and neither of those are good gameplay. So it's hard, and unfortunately, a lot of the threads.
50 KDR assault dropship.
Yeah,
it's balanced, guys. It's totally balanced. Don't change it at all.
And I'll totally admit that
no pun intended, right?
Yeah. It's on both sides though. You've got people on both sides that can often be very biased because they lack the insight of seeing the other side of the coin, and it turns into, the threads often kind of turn into a total pile of shit. I mean, Toddy posted up hey, we're thinking about fixing vehicles. Can we get your feedback in 20 pages? It was just totally a mess. So
well, even Rattati made a post. He's like, if the feedback doesn't improve in the vehicle thread, they're probably going to just move to addressing these things internally. Which that's how bad that thread ended up getting in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and it's unfortunately.
Which thread was it? The vehicle variants one?
Yes.
The HAV Bring Back Initiative
one. Yeah,
that one.
Sparky's fault. I blame Sparky and Laser.
I won't name names, but there are some heated opinions in that thread. And granted, that one is specifically about HAVs, but I think that the whole idea of making vehicles have a role in general is important, not just tanks. They just happen to be what Rattati posted about, but I think they really need to be looked at as a whole and kind of understood as a whole, because like I said, a lot of missing modules need to be added back in, and those can fit on any vehicle. So I mean, it's important to kind of go, okay, what do we actually want vehicles to do, so we know what to put in the game and how we want them to actually perform. And it's a big undertaking, and it's kind of a matter of how do you want to prioritize, what do you do first, in what can we do in phases versus what do we have to do all at once to make sure it works with each other. And it's tough, and it's difficult to keep the discussion from being a total mess, because people do get very opinionated, and they have very strong opinions about what they think it should be, and it's often the opposite of what the other guy thinks, and it gets messy. So it's been difficult. I mean, it's been a rough couple of weeks here.
About vehicle roles and the whole thing, I kind of agree with your idea, except that I think support vehicles should do the support, logistics LAVs, logistics dropships, normal dropships, transferring troops, etc. But I think there should be vehicles specifically designed for killing other vehicles, so they'll be hunting the support vehicles.
Yeah.
While AV would be pretty weak in support vehicles, but pretty strong against attack vehicles, so there won't be a problem where the attack vehicles just destroy infantry.
Sure, and that does kind of go along the lines of what I was getting at, that you have infantry with like a forge gun. That's obviously like the ultimate AV for an infantry is a forge gun. And so when you're looking at like an enforcer HAV, which would be designed specifically to blow up tanks, that's like even a bigger version of just that, but with also equally harsh downsides. They'd have less defense or whatever to kind of counteract that insane advantage of the strong AV. So like I said, it's doing what infantry do, but on a bigger scale with appropriate downsides to make sure that it's actually balanced and not just the total stomp fest.
Yeah, just see support vehicles to be pretty tanky, so you have plenty of time to disengage from AV. So you'll need vehicles to actually hunt them down.
Yeah, and I mean, you also have to make sure that vehicles aren't totally useless against infantry, because if they're useless, then infantry won't care about them, and then there won't be a reason to blow them up, and there should always be a reason to blow them up. So they have to be powerful in a sense that they're disrupted, that you want to remove them from the field, but not...
Look at it this way. If I had a dropship with a CRU just flying around over me, dropping troops on me, or the enemy had an LAV that supplied them ammo and kept them repaired, I would want to get rid of those.
Obviously.
Yep, absolutely.
So that's where I think...
I'm pretty sure everyone would.
That's where I think LAV should fit in terms of infantry and, well, little shenanigans.
Yeah, vehicles have to get beyond the role of blow things up, as a former CCP person so eloquently put it.
Blam!
No.
As for vehicles blowing up infantry, I think they should be fairly weak, just glass cannons, and you will need infantry support to actually survive, to get rid of all the AV people around. That's what I think, glass cannons.
I wouldn't necessarily say that. Like, say, HAVs, you would have small turrets to deal with infantry, you know?
I think you could. Let me. I'm going to throw this
It's
out.
like not like a full sort of protection. You would probably still need infantry. Say that there was like smart AV trying to like get at you. They couldn't necessarily hit them, so you'd still need infantry to go at them. But for like small things, for like an infantry just running across the screen or something, they're trying to get away from you. You might have some small turrets to deal with them. You know.
Yeah, one thing I would kind of offer is that I like the idea of kind of breaking the tanks into some different components where one's much more about destroying other vehicles and maybe one's more about general support. But what you could look at is dramatically reducing the speed, like the base speed of the Marauders basically. And the Enforcers, I think, would be more of the tank destroyer or the vehicle destroyer, and they could be faster with a much, much thinner tank. No pun intended. Much thinner on the HP. That might even things out a little bit. And I think the point about having small turrets to deal with infantry is very valid, because it's not fun if I'm trying to shoot swarms at a guy that if A, he can't get away from me, B, my swarms don't do anything, and then C, he has no way to really shoot at me other than swing a large railgun at me. That's kind of, that's not fun. It's, as Pokey said, you've got to figure out a way to make it somewhat fun for everybody.
Small turrets can do some damage against infantry, but they've always been wonky. Like, hit detection's been weird with them. I mean,
that's true.
I would like to say no, because chromo blasters and missiles were the bomb diggity. They were
chromo
awesome.
blaster. I guess when I say wonky, I specifically mean small rails, because my goodness.
God, yes, God.
They never hit where you want them to.
They couldn't do jack shit to anything. They were awful.
Rails in general have not
They
been
still
working
have
properly.
global hit detection. They just fire more, whatever. They just seem to actually have more bullets to go around.
Exactly. You can kind of be like, okay, well, my shot went 30 meters to the right. I guess I should go to the left a little bit with my next couple of bursts.
And sometimes the shot hits directly and doesn't do damage.
But then it seemed that back then it seemed that wherever you would aim, even if you were in a moving dropship, it would still hit the target. So if you were accurate, you could always hit the target. And I really missed that. I wish they would come back, because they weren't overpowered anything.
I actually enjoyed in Chromozone the counterbalance between the infantry and the small missile turrets on the dropship. So yeah, you could get probably one or two shotted by the small turrets, but at the same time, I could there was a good conflict resolution to it in terms of me shooting a forge gun at a dropship. Like, someone was going to win or someone was going to lose, but it wasn't necessarily like this long drawn out affair. Which was kind of, I don't know, and there's definitely, you wanted to get rid of the dropship as fast as possible kind of deal. But I don't know, it seems some of that's kind of lost now. It's very kind of like, the point now is to scare off vehicles rather than to kill vehicles and that sort of thing.
Well, this comes down to an issue that I've been talking about for a while. That the problem is that, as a vehicle pilot, you're invested in this thing, and you're a big moving target, and you tend to piss people off when you're on the field, so people want to kill you. The issue is that if you want, to survive, people are going to be shooting at you. You want to survive. The problem is that because AV has to give up so much to to actually run AV, because they have to lose their light weapon slot except for commando, you're basically saying that if I'm an infantry guy that wants to run AV and I want to fight a vehicle, I am extremely gimped against everything else. Whereas so what do you do? Do you say, okay, well, AV is really strong because they have to give up so much that we have to make AV super strong? Well, then it's hard to balance against, is the vehicle going to be strong? Like, should one person be able to solo the vehicle, or should it be 3 guys to kill the vehicle? I mean, should the vehicle need 3 people to kill the infantry? And I mean, the issue is that because you don't want to make it too easy to kill vehicles, but because people have to give up so much to run that AV, that they're disinclined to actually do it because they know they're going to get ripped apart by infantry. So I mean, like, I'll quote Titanfall on this one. I'm not a huge fan of the game, but what I like about that is that everyone in that game has an AV weapon, and what that means is that the vehicles can be obscenely strong because everyone at any given moment has access to an AV weapon, and they don't have to give up anything at all to actually fight. And that actually makes it a little more enjoyable because you can still fight the vehicles. You don't feel helpless, but it's going to take a bunch of guys to do it, which makes the vehicle guy feel strong. Like, okay, I can, one guy against me isn't going to do anything, but if they swarm me, I'm going to get ripped apart. And that's what I really like, because you can quickly switch this teamwork where, okay, that this tank is off on his own, and you just nuke the shit out of him with your little grenade launchers and whatnot, and you can kill him. But at the same time, one annoying guy with a swarm launcher can't blow me up because AV isn't so strong. But the issue is that because people in Dust have to give up so much to run AV, that they have to make AV innately powerful, but that also means that then if you want to be balanced against vehicles, then the vehicles have to be strong, and then if you don't have enough people running AV, then the vehicle's overpowered, and if people, it's hard to do and get it to work right. There's not enough AV saturation, and that's my biggest issue with it. That's why I've always wished that the assaults had 2 light weapons and the commandos didn't exist, because if every assault had 2 weapons, you basically have every assault could have running AV all the time, which would make it a lot easier to balance. And I think that's a huge problem. But unfortunately, since commandos exist, we can't really give them both, and it's a pain in the ass.
I would say that they could work on command suits finally, switch commandos for assaults, like what you were saying, have assaults have 2 light weapons, and then go from there. Would you say that's a good idea?
Well, I wish they were the same
have the
suit.
code. I remember them testing out stuff. There's even modules in the SDE.
I haven't seen any of that, so I can't comment.
I seem to remember something like that.
I mean, I guess my point I'm getting at is that I wish we had more saturation of AV on the field, because then if everyone's running some sort of AV almost 100% of the time, then vehicles can be strong, which means that you don't have this dichotomy of like, oh, well, one AV guy should solo a vehicle, because that is, again, difficult to make fun, because then if 2 guys get AV out, that vehicle is screwed no matter what.
Yeah,
and at the same time, go ahead.
Like right now, one of the I've been doing AV for a long time and talking to vehicle pilots and stuff. Like, one of the roles of vehicles is to disarm the infantry to a certain extent. You get them to switch AV so they're not as effective at dealing with the infantry. I think that being a role has absolutely caused problems. As you're saying, I think it's a really good and valid point.
Yeah, and I mean, it also, the fact is that vehicles are not encouraged necessarily to run full vehicles. You aren't encouraged to necessarily fill your small turrets with people, because it means, sure, you've got the additional firepower, and it does obviously provide an advantage, but it's like, it doesn't. I wish it was almost more required that you have to actually have 3 people piloting your vehicle so that it could be extremely strong, versus solo tankers, which are by far common. Tanks, dropships, you see all the time with a pilot by himself. And I wish we could come up with ways to encourage more of a team style of, you want to have 3 people in your vehicle helping you, and then you can say, okay, well, there's 3 people in the vehicle, and that's optimal, and now I need to have 3 AV guys fight it. I think that's more balanced and more fun than 1 versus 1, but we don't really have that.
Well, I think the other problem you're going to run into. I think you're going to run into a problem. You're going to need more than 16v16.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You would need a lot more people for that to work. Otherwise, you would just run out of people on the field trying to do that.
Yeah, we've all seen that happen,
It
too.
would be insane.
You get like 7 guys trying to fight for 3 points. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, that's a very valid point.
I mean, if you think about it, we almost have a similar problem with vehicles these days, because like you almost feel like, I mean, yes, a vehicle can take on infantry fairly effectively, but I mean, having to sacrifice putting 3 people in in a tank in order to deal with infantry almost feels akin to the same way in infantry having to give up a large sacrifice in order to having to deal with the tanks. And I think that just doesn't lead to fun gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, it is a very good point that you've got only 16 people, and now if you take away 3, I mean, that's actually a pretty significant chunk just to pilot one vehicle. And at that point, it's difficult to say, okay, well, if we're taking that much of the team to do one vehicle, how good is that vehicle going to be as an asset?
That's what I think. I mean, I think that a vehicle should be relatively proportionally powerful to how many people are in it. If there's 3 people in a tank, I'm more than happy with it requiring 3 AV to take it out. But the problem is that we've had this argument in the past that vehicles should take multiple AV to take out, even though they can be operated by a single person. And that's the sort of disparity that causes vehicle gameplay to be broken, is that one player has to continue to equal one player.
Well, I think a lot of that comes down to there's also a lack of options on how to manipulate vehicle movement as an AV player, as well as kind of control the battlefield. I mean, I would actually really love if you could actually set better traps, if you actually had to outsmart the vehicle had to outsmart you. And because right now it's basically like, can I do enough damage to this thing before it runs away?
Yeah.
That's basically what vehicle AV balances right now is, can I kill this thing before it gets around the corner? And it doesn't work because you can't, either you're almost always going to kill it before it gets away, or you're going to never kill it before it gets away. And so there's no skill involved in how you're actually piloting. I mean, there's some skill involved, but I mean, especially after 1.7, they stripped away a lot of the technical aspect of cycling modules and whatnot, and now it's just like flip your hardener on and just go as soon as something hits you, because you're going to get away, and that's it's boring. There needs to be more dynamic on what AV and vehicle interaction is, and we just don't have the tools to do that.
Yeah, the way I think about that is it's conflict resolution. You get the addition of war points for hurting vehicles was nice, but at the same time, I think a complete lack of conflict resolution in these engagements kind of leaves a bad taste for both parties.
Unsatisfying.
I don't see why the notion of you have to kill it is really so high, because I always thought that if you can get a vehicle to go away, sort of hide to wrap up and stuff, that it would be better than just killing it.
The problem is that vehicles can kill us.
The other problem is they're usually back within 30 seconds, or they cycle in another person to start taking in damage instead. We experienced this pretty heavily when before the ADS.
That second one is teamwork is OP, deal with it.
That's still true with if you kill the tank, because calling vehicles doesn't take long at all.
But then
it
costs them money, whereas we can lose 200k. We can lose tons of AV suits, proto suits that are 200k a pop, trying to kill a single tank.
I think a flaw that's come up a lot of times in AV versus vehicle discussions is trying to balance on ISK. I think a lot of times it's better to sit back and say, okay, if everyone has infinite ISK, both the infantry and the vehicles, what's the best type of gameplay in that situation?
Well, that doesn't mean we need to completely forget about the ISK.
No, of course. It has to be a component, but I think in terms of actually making the gameplay fun, you need to think about it in terms of...
You can adjust the ISK values later.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And there's also a matter of satisfaction of actually killing the tank versus just driving it off. Like, it's totally true that it's a similar effect of killing a vehicle versus making it leave the areas that, you've made it disengage and it stopped doing what it was doing. But in terms of it just being fun, right. seeing it pop is very satisfying. And you either, depending on what vehicle you're looking at, you either get that more often than you probably should or never at all. It's unfortunately, it's a matter of, you want to feel strong but not overpowered, and it's difficult to get that on both sides because there's a lot of factors involved, that make it hard to balance that properly.
Yeah,
I mean, after I've
more fun to hunt vehicles when they actually cost something.
I guess seeing this how I see it as those vehicles are so terrible. Whenever I kill one, it's just like I feel exactly the same as if I scare it away.
See, on my perspective, when a vehicle user has killed me like 5 times, and then someone suggests that I shouldn't be trying to kill the vehicle, I should just want it to go away, I laugh, because no, I want to kill it. It's been killing me.
Then kill it.
Well,
You also have mechanics
Revenge.
too of vehicle pilots often bail right as the ship is right as their tanks are exploding and that kind of stuff.
That's one of my biggest peeves. I want them to make
And they get
explode.
out with an Agent G and
Enter
destroy
exit
you.
animations in a explosion radius will solve that.
The enter-exit animation is probably something that's never going to occur. Maybe a enter-exit timer of some sort, but I just wonder if that would just be clunky and unwieldy and not very fun.
Well, I would, I've got kind of like I said, I'm not a vehicle driver, but prior to bandwidth, I actually used to enjoy, the bandwidth implementation. I actually used to enjoy running AV a fair amount. I really can't nowadays because, I primarily perform as a Logi, and the minute that you try to switch over to AV, you're kind of fucking yourself and your team at that point. It's a whole nother discussion, but even when I would run that, even here recently, I don't really have that many problems actively killing enemy vehicles. Now that means I have to be pretty focused, and that's what I'm primarily focusing my gameplay in that match on, is killing vehicles. But I think, just the vehicle versus infantry counterplay isn't actually all that bad right now. That's just, like I said, that's my perspective. It's like people are saying the sky's falling and shit, but
no,
it's not that bad. It's
pretty close, but the way it plays out, I don't think it's satisfying for really people on either end of the equation right now.
Yeah, that's what I agree with.
Better.
I think the game is probably massively more balanced in a lot of ways than it was, but there's also instances where that's made the gameplay a little less fun.
Well, so
Yeah.
then what you're advocating is an unbalancing of it. So
When
which way do you want to
everything is
unbalance
unbalanced,
it? Yeah, so which
everything
way do
is
you
fine.
want to? Which way do you want to unbalance it?
I'm not
you know.
suggesting unbalancing it. I'm suggesting seeing if maybe there's ways we can tweak the gameplay so that it's still balanced but feels more satisfying, is I think what we're all trying to talk about here.
What are we unsatisfied? That's what I don't understand, is what are we unsatisfied about?
I feel unsatisfied that my HAVs and my labs in total feel more like toys rather than before, where there was a intricate little tool that I had and that there's really nothing for me to do. Like earlier, I was playing a match. I just drove around. I had nothing to shoot at or anything. It was so boring.
Well, I mean, coming from, I've been playing vehicles since
from an AV perspective, it feels like there's no satisfaction in hunting them down anymore, because they just call them back instantly or just regenerate instantly and back in the fight.
Yeah, I mean, and the rewards for switching yourself out of now the war points rewards are nice, but like dedicating yourself to an AV role, it just doesn't feel as satisfying. I mean, back when quote unquote tanks were OP, back in like Chromosome and stuff, I mean, some other guys, we would love, hunting down a marauder was a fun activity because it felt like a fight. Like it was tooth and nail. You're going against the tank, tank's going against you, and then somebody wins in the end. I don't know. It just felt more.
That was an OP. Whoever said that HEVs versus AV in Chromosome was OP, they're an idiot. That's my opinion.
They had 90 KDR.
Wasn't Chromosome that point where we had the wonderful joy of Manus Peak's ambush with vehicles, and someone would call in a tank, and that was the match?
I hate that map for so many reasons, but
I
that
still
was one
have
of them.
PTSD from it.
See, I had fun with that map, but that's because I was sniping back then, and that map was a sniper playground. So,
see, the problem was not a single person would ever use AV on me, so I could just kill everything I saw. I seriously went through like a 10 match span where I didn't see a single AV.
There was nowhere to use AV
because it was useless. You shot a guy with a protoforge and he'd regen the shields faster than he can shoot the second shot.
And the thing you have to keep in mind as well is that AV has to rely on a lot of cover and stuff to work well, and Manus Peaks had cred for cover.
That is true. That map has zero cover anywhere.
It's better now, but that with how small the old ambush was, there's just nothing. and every single spot in the map was accessible to a tank.
Something that's I
It
know
still
that I've
felt
heard.
like a little sandbox to me, though.
I know I liked Old Manus Peak way better, but
The old Menace Peak had a bunch of like cracks in the sand and shit like that. Not cracks, valleys. You had to use that for cover, but I don't know, it never worked against AGVs. It was great for infantry, but yeah.
Oh no, you weren't hiding from me. I would find your ass, and then you were gonna die.
Kind of going back to what Jason and Zell were talking about in terms of balance versus fun. I mean, I've been playing with vehicles, mostly HEVs, but I've been playing with all vehicles since basically the very beginning in closed beta. And back in the day, when you had a vehicle, I'll use an HEV as an example, like an armor, like a Madruger. You had 5 low slots, and typically you'd put like an armor repper in there, a plate, and then 3 hardeners. And those hardeners were of fairly short duration, and so what you were constantly doing is as you're driving around, you're watching your hardeners and you're activating them one by one, and you're cycling them, and you have to kind of maintain those modules and keep an eye on them because you want to keep your hardeners going nearly constantly. You want to kind of minimize your downtime, make sure that you've got that up all the time. And so there was a lot of micromanaging, and it made vehicle fights feel very frantic, but it was also satisfying in terms of a tanker because you were sitting there doing like 12 things at once, and it was a pain in the ass and it was hard, but for me that's what made it fun. So when they reduced the modules down to 3 slots, your Madruger now is basically a hardener, a plate, and a repper. Well, the plate and the repper work on their own now. They're passive. So the only thing you're playing with is your hardener. So you're flipping that
Hardeners,
thing on.
armor hardeners right now, nah.
No, they're shit. The Madruger is shit right now, but that's a whole different discussion. My point is that as a vehicle pilot, the skill involved in managing your vehicle and managing your modules is gone. And for me, at least, that was a huge part of what made it fun. And you don't necessarily have to disrupt balance to make it more fun. You just have to expand out your options again. Now,
You're
I'm
suggesting making more slots, but then nerfing everything equivalently.
Effectively, yeah. So I mean, you would have similar overall stats, but you would have more stuff you need to actually play around with. For example, your hardeners may be of a similar percentage reduction, but they're of a shorter duration, so you need to cycle them constantly and keep an eye on them. And it makes it more interesting and less just like, oh, I took damage, flip the hardener on, let's go, just haul ass out of there, which is basically what it is now.
Now, could you potentially have it to where you keep modules that are as is today, that are much more like fire and forget, and then also add in another module line that's much more like, I need to manage this, I need to actually keep an eye on this, but I'm rewarded for that extra difficulty and basically upping the management needed of your modules.
Well, sure. I mean, even back in the day, we had armor hardeners or just armor and shield hardeners, and then there's resistance
plates.
The resistant plates were passive. They were less effective, but they were always on, and your hardeners were active. They were more effective, and you had to manage them. And I think that's fine. If you want to have an active and a passive version, with a passive being weaker, cool. Because some fits, I mean, even in Eve, when you fit your ship, you've got passive fits where you aren't dealing with active modules. It just goes, and sometimes that works if that's what the situation requires. But I mean, just the fact that there's no options in terms of fitting. You basically have you got like 1 fit for like a Madruger. You've got like maybe 2 fits for Rigonlagi. LAVs, they're basically just buffer tank them because they don't do anything else besides just move. And I honestly don't know a whole lot about your options. Their slot layout's actually not bad. That's more reasonable. They've got six slots, and I think the assaults have got 4, I think, total. That's a little more open, but yeah, like the HAV and the LAV, you can't do anything with them. They're boring. They don't require any maintenance, and it really removed that pilot skill out of it. Because I back in the day I felt like, yeah, I'm really good at managing my modules. I'm rewarded for that. Now it's just like, oh, I've got 1 module I have to worry about, and anyone can do that. That doesn't require any skill or any experience to pull that off. And I think that's a lot of the frustration in terms of AV is that pretty much anyone can hop into a pre-fit tank. It doesn't require much thought to actually make it work properly, and they can go around stomping, where the AV guy's got, like you said, use a lot of cover. He's got to get, up in a good position, all this other stuff. I think that the amount of skill required to run AV is disproportional to the amount of skill to run a lot of the vehicles like the HAVs. And I would like to actually put some more of that user ability back into the vehicles, because right now it isn't there, and it's not satisfying for people who are long-term veterans, and it's certainly not satisfying for the AV guys who have to fight against somebody who's got a tank they don't have to worry about. It's pretty much all passive. They can just stomp around the whole time. So I think that's going to go a long way. And like you said, Zell, it's a matter of, I think there is some balancing issues in terms of AV in vehicle, in terms of just raw damage. I think between certain vehicles, there's a big difference in strength. Like I think anyone who's run a Madruger can tell you that the fitting on a Madruger is horseshit compared to a Genlachi. It's terrible. So I mean, you need to fix that balance within the vehicles themselves, but take those stats and just expand out the modules and how they work. Put the skill back into the vehicles and actually put some more user ability back into piloting them, rather than just kind of like you said, fire and forget.
I agree with Pokey, because I can remember times where I actually felt my heart race when I was in a fight. It was so frantic, and you were trying to think clearly and efficiently of how you manage your modules. I can remember times where I had the best of times ever because of that. Now, I haven't felt that same feeling since 1.7, which is kind of sad, and it makes me even sadder just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Well, that feeling, as an infantry, I used to have that back in Chromosome, but it disappeared for some reason once Uprising went out.
It's all Uprising's fault. Blame it.
Well,
yeah. Go ahead, Pokey. Sorry.
Just one quick thing. I think that the reason they reduced the slots in the first place was that they were probably intending to add advanced and prototype tanks or something. I don't know. They did this weird sort of tier-aside thing with vehicles that didn't work so well.
Well, the goal, remember, was because you're mentioning how you were
playing that.
You were using your modules, stretching them out so that they would last over a period of time, using one and then the other and then the other. And the big point that they were selling at that point was the whole waves of opportunity thing, where you could go in, have a lot of power, and then have to back out and wait for your cooldowns.
Yeah, but that's not
that
fun.
That was the thing.
No,
That
and
is
I
not
think
fun.
it did not work out well. I don't think so.
You could use multiple hardeners at the same time, no?
Yeah.
Good.
So, yeah, that's a waves of opportunity. If you need that power right now, you have it.
Yeah, or you can
people did
stretch it
that.
out. Yeah, no, I would pop all three at once, and I'd go into God mode and haul my ass out of there if I had 6 guys shooting at me. But then I'd be, out of the fight for, a minute and a half, 2 minutes.
It was a minute 35 seconds, I think.
Yeah, it was, and that's fine. I think that if you need to, you should have the option to go, oh shit, I need to pop, all my hardeners and my damage control right now and get out of here. That's, or I can spread it out. Then you've got options. But with the way it is now, But
you pop one and then you drive. That's lame.
Yeah, I remember seeing sometimes just vehicles so... Like, when somebody activated all 3 hardeners, I just get the fuck out of there.
Yeah,
Fucking
no.
Chromosome.
But you also knew that they weren't going to be gone for a while, which was also important.
Yeah, I just bid my time and waited.
Mm-hmm. And that's also another issue that I'll touch on real quick before we move on here. But another issue is that because vehicles kind of underwent this weird sort of tier-aside, AV, however, did not. And so now you've got a situation where vehicles are trying to be a single tier, but AV is trying to be 3 tiers. Okay, so what do you balance against? Do you balance AV against, do you balance vehicles against proto AV, making standard and advanced useless, or do you balance it against standard, making advanced and prototype AV overpowered? And I think we need to kind of move back away from this flatlined, vehicle tier, because you really can't properly balance it against a non-tier system versus a tier system and actually have it balance out right. Because one way or another, something's going to be overpowered or underpowered. There's just no way around it.
I prefer that AV was tier side, but whatever.
I agree with the kitty right now.
All right. Now that we've achieved some level of common understanding between the two competing overlords of the podcast channel, I would like to take this as an opportunity to kind of segue over into one of our other primary topics for the night, if that's okay. And actually, we can kind of drive this a little bit in terms of the skill tree. And one of the things you guys didn't talk about a whole lot was the actual vehicle skills and how useful or well put together they are post tier.
They're terrible.
So what I'd like to do is kind of throw this onto the table for a little bit of discussion is the current state of the skill tree itself. And you guys want to use like some of the vehicle examples, feel free. But basically, if you go through the skill tree in Dust, there are a lot of different locations where you can find, something that one of our fans, a guy by the name of Hinox, he's a huge Serazel fan. In fact, he's asked me to try to somehow secure a poster for him with a large picture of Serazel on it. I don't know what he wants to do to that poster, but he's asked for it. Anyway, one of the things Hinox refers to as bear traps, or sort of these things that you think you might be getting an advantage, or that you might be gaining something for an investment in SP, but ultimately you really don't. And his, I think the one he tends to use is Dropsuit Command 5, which effectively means you've just put a lot of SP into something to say that you put SP into it, and it does really nothing for you. There are a lot of skills where levels 2 and 4 do absolutely nothing for you, other than allow you to spend more SP on levels 3 and 5 to get something. There's also some of the vehicle components where literally you're spending SP to do fuck all that I know. I just know that the vehicle SP tree makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I remember.
Vehicle command. It has never done anything ever.
Yeah.
Why is it there?
I mean, you get into things like frame drop suits. I mean, that's like saying you should have that's part of the discussion, is having the frame suits mean something. But I unfortunately dropped SP into level 4 because when I came over from Eve, I thought that SP would matter in the advanced drop suits.
You made a grave mistake.
I did, and I freely admit
it's
that.
It's a trap.
It's a trap.
Yeah,
It's a
exactly.
trap.
I think that's like a universal theme of a lot of the skill tree in Dust is it's a trap, because a lot of it is. I mean, you've got things where you only need to skill like an LAV up to 1. You've got things where in the vehicle tree you were mentioning. As the clock goes in my background, the drops, the CRU modules, the skill for that, you only need to skill up to 1 because there are no advanced or proto CRU modules. It's all over the place, and it feels like a lot of skills are there just to be an SP sync and not actually have any purpose. And anything that's just an SP sync is not a fun skill to actually go through. It feels like a grind. It feels like, okay, I'm going to have to do all, I'm going to have to eat my broccoli before I can have some dessert.
Well, I think, a buddy of mine actually made the observation, which I think is pretty accurate. He said, if you look at all of the balancing and all of the different tweaks to the game of Dust over the last 2 years, they've never tweaked the skill tree. And so you have all these changes going on.
Tree.
That's things like you have all these changes in game going on, but there is a clear linkage to where players spend probably the most valuable in-game asset, which is their SP, that has not been given a commensurate update. And I don't mean when they did refund some SP during the vehicle tier side, and when they added the racial drop suits, but they fundamentally didn't change anything, or they didn't update anything in the skill tree. And I thought that was a very valid point, that they haven't actually gone back in there and looked at what some of that stuff does or doesn't do.
All right, about the vehicle tree. I remember about 2 months ago, I had 5 million SP just lying around, or was it 4 million? Never mind. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to get an AGV. Why not?
Oh dear.
And I'm looking at it from someone who has never really skilled into vehicles. I always militia vehicles, shit like that. So I was like a blueberry. I had no idea what I'm doing. So I go into the skill tree and I just look at it and think, so I need this skill, but make sure to not get it past level 1. I need that skill, make sure to not get it past level 3. And why the fuck do I need this skill when it doesn't give me anything?
But you're required to have it to get something else you want.
Yes, and I'm just sitting there and I'm trying to find all the landmines to make sure I don't slip up. And even then, once I did skill into the skill tree with all my 4 million, or was it 5 million SP, and I felt no difference.
It just doesn't really go anywhere, does it? Yeah.
With infantry, I just skill into armor, skill into shields, and I feel the difference. it makes a lot of difference. Skill into CPU, skill into PG. There's a difference. With vehicle, nothing.
Speaking of PG, do you remember when they castrated vehicle engineering? That pissed me off to no end. I wanted to kill people for that.
I mean,
as an overlord, you're allowed to do so.
Yes, I am.
I mean, this comes down to
here we have a subject called Soraya Zell. Go ahead.
Yes, let's go.
I think it also comes a lot down to player perception and whatnot. Because I mean, I've worked with a lot of new players, and they've asked me. I said, "Well, train this skill." I'm like, "Well, what does that do?" I'm like, "Well, it unlocks another skill, so it doesn't do anything." I'm like, "Well, yeah." I mean, in terms of like, my whole point is that every level of every skill should offer an advantage, no matter how small it is, no matter how inconsequential it might seem. Every SP you spend needs to actually feel like you're getting something out of it. And currently, like, half the tree doesn't do that. Like Jay said, levels 2 and 4 almost never do anything. For vehicles, levels 2 through 5 almost never do anything. I mean, even drop suit command or your frame suits. There's no reason to train a lot of these skills all the way up to 5. And in many cases, training levels 2 and 4 don't do anything at all. So as a new player, I'm grinding up. I want to get stronger. I've got all this SP. I'm spending on it, and I'm getting basically nothing out of it other than the right to train more skills, which probably won't do anything for me anyways. So I think that everything needs to offer some sort of advantage, even if it's like a, drop suit command is like plus 2% to, armor and shield level or something like that. Something small. Whatever. As a new player, when I spend SP, I should get something out of it. Even as a veteran, I want to get something out of every level I train.
Yeah, true. At the same time,
observation.
Phrase.
Go ahead.
At the same time, though, you want to also keep an eye to make sure that it's not. You don't end up with a situation where if I have low SP and this person has high SP, they're going to win every time because of all these accumulative bonuses that have been baked into the skills.
Dude, that boat's already left.
True.
Yeah, but at the same time, you don't want to make it worse than it is.
Well, no, that's true. But here's the thing: if you go ahead.
It gets surrounded by putting whatever gives you a lot of a big advantage is usually a very low SP skill. You can just train it in a day or two.
That's true.
And unlike Dust, where say electronics and engineering is a 5x skill, and even veterans, a lot of them don't even bring it to level 5. They just keep it at level 4.
Why?
Because it takes too much SP for too little gain. I personally have it to level 5. That's those two are the first skills I brought to level 5, but still.
Good point.
I mean, that's also a good point, because, I mean, Eve, when you train, like, a turret, typically the bonus you get for training that turret is usually like a plus 5% to damage for that turret. But for Dust, you training your assault rifle operation, well, you don't get any additional damage. You got to max that thing out, and then you get the proficiency skill, which adds more damage. So in that regard, like
and
you
even
said,
then it was castrated.
Right, but I'm saying that as a veteran, I'm going to get damage. I'm going to have a lot of damage on my gun, and you're not going to even get to possibly train to that for a very long time. So I think you kind of want to have the weight in the beginning of the skill tree.
If the skill took a low amount of SP, a new player could, even with the starting amount of SP, if he spent it right, he could very well max out the assault rifle.
Let me throw this
be
out
on
here.
the same level.
So I will. One of the things that Eve does get right is probably how they have set their skill progression up. I mean, they do it, and obviously some of that was modeled over into what we do in Dust. So one of the things that has always annoyed me, like when I go into light weapons, why am I training like ammo capacity up for every single weapon that I want, or reload speed or whatever?
Eve,
that wasn't used to be the case
what you
a
have,
while ago. Chromosome, if I remember correctly.
Right. In Eve, what you have are a series of basically support skills, gunnery support skills or missile support skills or whatever. So you've got your baseline skill, and we'll just use turrets because it easily translates over to rifles or whatever. So you train gunnery, which is it's like a 1x skill. It trains very fast. You train that up to 5 very quickly, and that's usually where you get a damage bonus. So and it's kind of what Kat was saying, is like things that give you the bigger bonuses, you make them easier to get to.
Yeah, we
And
used to
then,
have that with weaponry. It used to give us damage, but it was a
Yeah.
very low SP skill. Everyone had it.
right, and that's okay. And then from there, you should have a series of different support skills. Like sharpshooter is a good one. That should apply. Like if I train sharpshooter to 5, that should apply to every light weapon that I pick up. And here's the thing: some people will say, "Well, yeah, but some weapons it doesn't apply." Okay, then that doesn't apply. Or some weapons, hey, that only has a very small effect based on the style of weapon. Okay, it has a very small effect. And then some weapons, it's really, really critical. And then you get the maximum, maximum usage of that SP. But me training sharpshooter up should apply to any of those type of weapons. So, and that's what I never could understand about why Dust did that. It seemed like in
Like
some
they
ways
could
they
even just split it up to light, heavy, and sidearm if they really wanted to have multiple skills. But
sure.
I mean, I
It
think
just
some
seems
of
like
that.
something that would be CCP logic, in my opinion.
Well, look, it seems. I think some of the issues though have to do with actually how the skills and how their effects actually apply to the game itself. Like some of the base way that these skills actually plug in to different things.
yeah, I was about to mention that in Eve, you could have a skill like it itself doesn't do anything, but say a ship, it has a thing that says for every level of that skill you gain this and that bonus, and there could be multiple ships using the same skill and they will all get their own bonus.
Yeah, the effect check is on the item itself in Eve, and rather than the skill specifically. I think
Like,
that's
say, training up, I don't know, logistics cruisers, you would get a bonus for on the ship.
Yeah. I mean, sure. Yeah, I mean that's
one skill could do many different things. It is the thing that happens in Eve, and in Dust, a skill does a very specific thing and nothing more. And I think that's definitely a problem. And I don't know if that has to do with how things were specifically implemented, or maybe that is in fact the reason behind it. But it's something that's plagued Dust for a really long time. You can't just have like X skill, but okay, it's going to give you. Okay, let's say you did an ammo bonus skill. So if in some weapons a percentage bonus is kind of useless because, like, let's say a low ammo count weapon like a flaylock. So if you have a percent bonus, that skill's kind of crummy. But if the skill were to say, okay, if you have the ammo bonus, it gives you +1 missile for every level to the flaylock, but it gives you +10% to the assault rifle. That kind of thing. But I don't know if they can even code in that kind of variation for just one skill.
If they were able to do that, that would be completely awesome, in my opinion. I'll be fully on board with something like that.
Well, then it works in Eve to great effect. I mean, I've run into the wall of, okay, let's think of an idea for, the assault suit. Well, you can think of bonuses for the assault suit, but typically the bonus that skill is going to offer isn't going to affect all the racial weapons within that suit. Opposed to like in Eve, where you would have like, okay, I'm training my Caldari battleship, and the Raven goes, okay, well, for every level of Caldari battleship, you get a bonus to your missiles. If I'm, flying a rock, it goes, okay, well, for every, level of Caldari battleship, you get bonuses to your railguns. And so then you can actually have variants of the same suit to make sure that, okay, well, if I'm, if I like to run a sniper rifle on my assault suit, for example, I can use this kind of Caldari assault to get a bonus to the sniper rifle. Or if I want to run a rail rifle, I can use a different kind of assault to get a different bonus, but it's still all tied to that singular bonus.
Well,
and it's much more flexible.
The other thing
Cheerside would help with that.
It would,
Yeah.
but the other thing I'd kind of point out, and Pokey's kind of getting on something that I've been a big proponent of for a long time. If you look at how the bonuses are structured in Eve, and Kane, this kind of goes to Kane's point, a bonus, particularly on the ships, not so much on the modules or the skill. Those are pretty much like the Dust ones, but in the ships in Eve, and you can translate that to either the vehicles or the dropships in Dust, you can get a lot of very interesting gameplay. So in Eve, a hybrid weapon is either a blaster or a railgun. Okay. In Dust, it doesn't work that way. It's either a rail rifle, some kind of rail tech weapon, or it's a plasma weapon. Same theory. But the difference is in Eve, bonuses, that the gunnery or the turret skill bonuses that you get out of ships of the Galente and the Caldari line say the word hybrid. So what tends to happen is Caldari ships get things like range bonuses, or that kind of stuff to hybrid weapons. Now that means that bonus can also apply to a like a blaster as well. So you can get some longer range out of your blaster, but it works better if you optimize it kind of along racial lines. You take the railgun, which is a long range weapon, and you give it an additional bonus to to range, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of things that I actually think that they really could look at how EVE has structured their bonuses and look perhaps at our skill tree. I think this is just me here, but job number 1, go through the entire skill tree, and everything should give you something. I don't care if it's 1% or if it's one thingy or whatever, but every investment of SP in every level of every skill needs to provide some tangible benefit to the player. That would be job 1. Job 2 would be, how do you optimize the skill tree or harmonize the skill tree with what are we actually doing in the game, and then how to make it more perhaps accessible to newer players. And I think you can use some of the existing mechanics of, again, I'm a big fan if there's a way to do it. How about support skills by weapon class? Or there's a variety of different options there. But I think that those are the basic things that need to occur in the skill tree. Does that sound about right, guys?
Yeah. Oh, that just reminded me. Where's my Gal faction rails? Been waiting on those for a long time.
They've been gone for a long time. But I remember
will forever remain CQC, and you will never get out of it.
Oh, I want my Gal faction rails though. That would be really nice.
Tagging on what Jason said, I think every time when you actually level up a skill, you should get a pop-up of what exactly you just unlocked in terms of both bonus and items and/or.
The other thing is CCP doesn't necessarily need to be afraid of... I don't think the CCP necessarily needs to be afraid of having a skill that only goes to level 3. I mean, I don't know if that would break the game or something, or if it'd be better just to have things go to level 5. But if a skill only needs like 1 level, or 2 levels, or 3 levels, just have it be 1 or 2 or 3 levels.
But everything
that'll be hard
also
to get
goes
used
up to level 5.
That'll be hard to get used to, but we could probably get over it.
No, I mean,
if I remember correctly, a lot of Tech 2 modules actually unlock at level 4, not level 5.
That is correct. That's absolutely correct. I mean, and that's...
So level 5 just gives you another level of the bonus that it gives. It doesn't give you new modules.
Yeah, or you need at level 5 to unlock some other advanced skill tree node. Yeah.
The way bonuses are applied in EVE right now, not only does it create problems like the traps, but also it locks in the design for what you do. Because think about how much gnashing of teeth has been done over what bonus a particular skill applies. So rather than Mars Scouts for a long time was considered just a terrible, only getting the bonus to stamina and stuff just seemed like a terrible thing. So it just seems like if, like you were saying, it would be so much better if we had side grades to suits and the bonus was on the suit itself. That way, and only that, it gives CCP a lot more freedom to develop new suits. So you just have the Amar skill for light suits. Okay, the Amar skill for light suits, it does something different. For let's say it's an assassin suit or something like that, or you have something that's a recon suit. It just seems the way it's designed right now just puts CCP in a box, and it makes it harder for them to do anything.
With the Amar Scout, as far as I'm aware, the problem was actually finding a role that wasn't already occupied.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right, Kat, but I would say that I think Kane's point is valid in that if you could have, it's almost like the Type 1, Type 2 suits, you know what I mean? You can have Amar Scout suits or Amar Advanced Light Frame, and you could have a Scout, a this, or a that. It gives you more options in how you put the suits together. Fixing suits is actually, in my opinion, one of the easiest things that they can work on. That's it needs to be done in certain cases, but you can that's one of the easiest things that they can do is. But the underlying piece of how all the skills work, I think, it's probably a much bigger project in terms of effort.
We used to sort of add sort of the variation between the within like the same frame, because remember when we had the 0.0 and then the 0.1 suits?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's kind of like that's type 1, type 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those actually I thought that they would actually bring those back once they got the racial parity and everything, so we could have like a one type of suit for a certain type of situation and another, but I guess that never materialized or anything.
Actually, I tell you what, Kane, I think you've hit on. I'm sitting here thinking through this, and like if you took like a Cal Assault and you have one that is beefed up for, you could take the exact same frame, the exact same model or whatever, maybe change a couple of the colors on it, but one is set up to optimize usage of the rail rifle, and then one might be set up to optimize usage of, a swarm launcher. Like that would be an incredibly easy thing to do if you set the base skill tree up the way that you're describing. I think you're right. That actually gives CCP a ton more options in introducing like side grade content, or different things, that would allow for emergent gameplay.
Going back for a moment to the skill thing, I looked up some ships to try and find a good example. Here we have Tech 2 covered up ships. Here we have the Helios. The Helios, it gets bonuses for hacking, gets bonuses for decrypting, shit like that. And there we have the Nemesis, which is a stealth bomber. It's a completely different role, but they both work off the same skill.
Yep, that's a perfect example of it.
The thing is, not having that flexibility is gimping CCP's ability to create variation, and I think in some cases to even balance things.
Okay, well let me kind of throw the line in the water then for Iron Wolf and Zell. Like, is this something that has been addressed or discussed with CCP at all?
NDA.
This is actually something. No, this is actually something that requires lots of logic and reasoning and really good sense making for us to bring up to our Taddy, because it is a lot of work. So to actually get something like this going would actually require a very strong case, because the amount of work involved to expand and rearrange everything and make things more proper must have at least very positive benefits in the end when we do decide to go after it. And it's not that CCP Vertati is not against the idea, it's just that he's reluctant to possibly doing the wrong thing again. Because he has observed things that have gone wrong before he got there, and he doesn't want to be trying to play a broken record, so to say.
Pokey, it's time to make a mega thread.
I'll get on it right away.
That is correct.
The thing is about these skills and stuff and these issues. I mean, it goes back to even before before CPM 1, even before CPM 0, back into the closed beta. These kind of issues were raised and just never addressed really. And I think the sunk cost issue, like something that it scares CCP a lot of times. They're scared of how much effort and work it goes in, because you're really getting into the meat and bones of Dust and how things actually work. And I think in a lot of ways, for any Eve players out there, well, look, I think for a lot of Eve players out there, it's analogous to how for the longest time CCP would absolutely never ever want to touch POS code, like ever, or corporals, those types of things.
No, they're actually.
I remember they tried to modify something and it completely wrecked everything.
I think it was something with the collision code, and it caused the Titan to go to light speed.
Yeah.
Oh like dear, that sounds pretty fun. Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And the Titan pilot that got stuck in this would never get out of warp ever.
Well, that's awesome.
Is someone shooting?
Not yet.
Okay, I thought I heard shooting.
No, we're good. The
pew pew.
Okay, so there it is.
I think we do generally agree that the skill tree is one of those things that probably could be fixed, but it's one of those I just want to make sure I understand, Iron Wolf. Like, is that the community's responsibility to bring that up to CCP to fix, or is that not like something that they should be like, yeah, we kind of need to fix it because it's like our game and shit? I was confused
I mean-
with the way you said that. That's all.
CSP does have a desire to do it, but there are only so few people working on Dust 514 right now, and it's a matter of priority of what we need to get done. And I agree
What are you
that
talking about? Legion is dead. You have all the developers in the world.
So basically, if we could somehow get more devs on the team, they could do all that awesome stuff.
Buy ore.
Sweet.
Yeah, give more. You want more developers,
Strong
give more.
boxes.
But yeah, I mean, it's Rattati has like this gigantic list of all the things that are really, really need to be fixed. But it's a matter of figuring out which ones to tackle at which points, and with the resources they have for any given point.
And the list keeps growing exponentially every time you visit the forums.
Oh, really?
Well, I think at the
Yes,
very least we
really.
can get bonuses in for every level of every skill. That's not a big code undertaking. That's just a matter of coming up with the bonuses and plugging them
Yeah,
in.
I mean that I think is probably pretty approachable.
It's a good first step, I think.
Okay. Well, I think we've kind of killed that one. I'd like to move on kind of to the last topic, and we can just touch on this briefly, but curious what your guys' thoughts on the Trello community feedback board, how you think it's working. And more to the point, I guess, as I asked the CPM guys, because you can see who is on there. Like I've seen Rattati, Rouge, and some other people actually with a little green dot by their name that says that in theory that they actually have the page up and they are looking or recently have looked at it. So what are the impressions of the community board? Is Rattati getting or do we think he's getting what he wanted out of it? Is it useful? Not useful? What do you guys think?
I don't like it. I don't know why. It seems like a good idea. I just don't like it.
I have the same feeling, and I think I know why. I think. The thing is that this is a one-way thing. We have no feedback. We just at least have the devs comment, or at least have didn't Rattati say that he wants to show his own
Yeah,
thing?
that's what he said. Like
I guess that's why.
I want to say about almost 2 months ago. Maybe it was a month and a half. I don't know. He was talking about cleaning up his own board so he could open that up to people, and then people could see. People would see progress in that they would see something that maybe they had brought up or they saw someone else bring up that had made it to his personal board. I know the biggest thing is he's working on cleaning it up so it was presentable, because he leaves a lot of non-politically correct notes in there that may or may not address specific players, like
Nope, that needs to stay in. All of it needs to stay in.
But he was working on that. I don't know how much time he has been able to put to that, or how much has to be done, and anything. I did poke him about it this week. We mentioned it, but yeah, I mean, there's supposed to be a feedback loop on that.
Well, I thought it said that
because
there
if
were.
it's one way, it just doesn't work.
I mean, well, every now and then you see Rattati himself posting Trello cards and attaching somebody's name to one of his Trello
but
cards.
he hasn't actually made comments on any of them, and that was kind of what it was intended to do. I
No,
thought
what he
he's been doing
posted,
Go ahead, Kat.
What happened there was that people were doing it wrong, so he cleaned out the Trello board and explained exactly what you have to do. He made the cards and added the people who had the original idea.
Yeah, it was administrative work. My understanding is that we were supposed to put the ideas up. We don't comment on each other's, but you can vote on them, which I found to be an interesting mechanic. And then then CCP would comment on the community recommendations.
Yeah, it's like you're not supposed to comment on the Trello cards at all.
Right.
So if anyone who uses Trello has comments on the card, you're a bad person. You need to edit your description and that's where you actually put your stuff, I think.
But I
people
think
keep commenting.
Well, no, I actually there's not a whole lot of that. I mean, people have generally been pretty good about that.
And one of the things I think that's been really successful at limiting some of that kind of messed ups with the Trello board is people giving a forum link to a Trello card.
That works very well. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I guess I will fall in with Kat on this. Is that I think the original idea was that there was going to be some feedback mechanism. and that is definitely missing at this point, I think.
I think I figured out why I don't like it. Yeah, Pokey has that vehicle thing that he made for Google Docs, and I put a major shit ton of comments on the side of it, right? Like I was just commenting as I go what he said. For the way that Ritati explained it, where you're not supposed to really comment on the idea, I guess that's why I don't really like it, even putting up my own ideas.
I guess what they were going for is the Trello is a means to organize ideas in a very clean fashion, and then they link back to the forums which are used to actually comment on the ideas. Unfortunately, people don't actually link back, so you don't get that option.
Which is why I have a problem with it.
And I think the Trello board is definitely useful, and I think definitely we're missing that next step of having CCP connect to it. But at the same time, I think just a couple little usage things, like if I don't know, people just don't know better in a lot of cases, I think is what it comes down to. And also you have some weirdness where people will go through and use different, like they will edit somebody else's Trello card.
I am as well.
Sorry about the clock, guy.
That scared me.
Yeah, no problem. I think where Kane was going with that is there's just some education that need to go on with like physically using the Trello board, which I would tend to agree with. Now, one thing I would offer is that what I found pretty interesting is you look at how different ideas have been voted on, and I thought that was a good idea by sort of racking and stacking them by like some sort of that tacit sort of, yes, I think this is a good idea vote that you can put on something. And it's really interesting when you look at the topics that clearly lead the board. I think it's actually not a bad picture of like areas that the community would actually really like to see addressed very directly. So I, for what it's worth, I actually thought as a, something a little bit better than anecdotal, but less formal than a broad-based, data pull from the community. It was a good sensing round of where the community was at in terms of what they would like to see fixed, or certain things that they all agree, or a large chunk of people agree on, needs to be addressed.
I was just thinking about this. What I was thinking about is like, I wish that there was some place where you could just like type out your ideas, right? And then people can comment on them on the side, and then like every week or a month or so, there would be like, you can post your idea onto like a panel. They would review it, and the best ideas would get moved to Ritati, something on the lines of that. That seems to be a better idea in my head than that.
The same thing, going through a real strict voting system and saying like, oh, this is popular, let's go push this through. I don't know, like I think the soft vote that's on the Trello board right now, like, some things can have a vote, but it doesn't really do anything for it. I don't know. I think if you have this voting system, there could be really terrible ideas that are, get voted on a lot, or there could be ideas that have absolutely no technical feasibility. So I don't know. Like, I'm very wary of like, popularity contests for ideas specifically. I mean, to a point, it's good, because you need feedback and you need
right.
like
it has some value. It's not meant to be the end all, and there's a lot of feedback channels, obviously, through the forums, the Trello, the CPM, etc., Skype, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I'm just weird about it. I guess that's all it is.
You're what about it?
I guess I'm just weird about it. I don't know. I know it's good. I just really don't like it.
That's my general feeling too.
So you're sounding like you just want a more definitive, like, this happens and then this will be this result from engaging in the feedback in a certain way, is kind of what I'm getting.
Kind of.
Possibly.
It's odd. I can't explain it. I'm terrible at explaining things. Yeah, just leave it at that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll buy that. I think
that's
big
because
thing
you're a fish.
I think the thing that would actually be useful is if there was some indication of feedback, which is, I think, what drew most of us to the Trello board. That was supposed to be a location where there would be some level of feedback coming back from CCP based on sort of the community ideas. So just throwing it out there. I mean, and I'm only responding to it primarily because, it came from Rat. He's the one that put it out there and said, "Let's all you guys go to this. Let's try it out and see how it works. This is what I want to do with it." So, I think a lot of
then
people
the
have.
Rat said,
Yeah, it was like, well, I think we've done what he wanted for the most part. I'm just like, so what now is kind of where I'm at with it. It's useful, I think, but like I said, without understanding what he does with it or how he looks at it or views it, it's really hard to judge its worth. Okay, well, guys, I think we've been on the air for quite a while, so barring any last minute topics here, I'd like to go ahead and move into shout outs if that's okay.
Oh, I thought we was going to talk about PS2.
Oh, yep, you're right. We can do that very briefly. So Planet Side 2 is coming out on the PlayStation 4 here pretty quickly. I caught an article by Draxus on his website reference which corpse in Dust were likely to have a significant presence. Perhaps not move like en masse over, but have a significant presence in PlanetSide 2 because I think the really the only parallel, the biggest parallel is that there's no other venue for like large scale tactical gameplay, at least that I'm tracking, where you could put more than like a squad of people from your clan or your group or your
I believe
on.
it will scratch an itch that I had a problem with Dust, is that you have a giant corp of like 200 people, maybe even more, but you can only play with like 6 at a time, or if you're in PC, then 16 at a time. It doesn't feel like you're in a large group of people.
I would agree with that, and that's probably the biggest draw to PlanetSide, at least from my perspective.
Since I've played it, I can say for a fact that it's a terrible game, and if anyone thinks that it is good, I want you to do this.
When did you play it?
I want you to do this. Find a PC, play it for 15 minutes, and see what's going to happen. You'll be why am I playing this? Why?
It was fairly decent.
No, the game's terrible. The game's terrible.
When did you play it?
It's bad.
Look,
I played it since release, and I stopped about a year and a half ago because it was just awful.
All right, everybody,
I've heard it
stop.
got worse.
I'll tell you guys just like I told you in the pre-show. If you haven't played a game in like more than like a fucking year, it's really hard to say the game sucks. Because I would point to you about this game called Dust 514.
After the show, I'm going to re-download PlanetSide 2.
I still haven't updated.
And I will report on next week how awful I think it is.
You're CCPPR. You have no word on this.
I was told that it's still bad by several people, so I'm just going to go off of it by that.
Would anybody agree that there's a lot of people that have pretty much the same opinion about Dust 514?
Look, I will have to say, I mean, sure, but at the same time, something about PlanetSide 2 that is the gunplay is definitely is good, and I wouldn't say I don't know if it's better than Dust, or I don't. Some of that can be
I would say yes.
I mean, and not only that, movement is definitely better in PlanetSide 2. I think some of the core gameplay core components of like moving around and shooting another person is definitely a smoother experience in PlanetSide 2, but then it's like what happens beyond that in terms of like the free-to-play mechanics, and in terms of what you do in the game does it have any kind of lasting impact and that sort of thing, and social aspects of the game.
That and the fact that the vehicles are just bad.
Didn't we have like a whole segment about how people are bitching left and right about vehicles and Dust?
No, they're worse.
They're worse than PlanetSide 2. They don't balance against low numbers either, which is what my server's still going through.
That's the problem. They are worse. They are worse than what vehicles are now.
And hey, when you manage to be worse than Dust, then you know you've got a problem.
Yeah, that's dang. Let's just leave it at that.
Let's
I don't know.
Go ahead, Armos.
You design a game that's supposed to have hard counters in it, and said target of the hard counter turns around and still annihilates the hard counter in one shot. Yeah.
Wait, what?
The ESS versus Liberators. Liberators can take an ESF out to one shot.
Yep.
And when
Okay.
you have low server numbers, it's too easy for the Liberator.
Okay, I mean, sure. I mean,
Planet 2 has a problem where it has to balance for both low player numbers and high player numbers. That changes
It
the
fails on
saturation of
both,
AV.
in my opinion.
what
Well,
was that code? Okay, I just didn't hear you.
I said it fails on both, in my opinion, as far as I remember. I don't.
Okay.
That was
I
a
don't
year
know if
and a
they
half ago.
changed it from
Everything-
before.
Sorry.
I don't know if they changed it from before, but I've been told that it feels like the same level of bad as before, maybe even slightly worse. So I would say that it is still bad. And this is from like 30 people that I used to play PlanetSide 2 with, so I kind of know.
And I think in some cases that PlanetSide 2 is actually probably a good test case example for why you can't just open world something and leave it at that, because it's just imbalanced.
Oh god, no. I would never say that something like this should be done in any game like, a PlanetSide 2 model in any game should never be done. Ever. It's just bad. It
Look,
doesn't make any sense.
It
The thing that-
scratches an itch.
Look, the thing
It's
that
not for
frustrates
everyone.
me. The thing that frustrates me with PlanetSide 2, though, is that everything is so very sharded. You know, you have the East Coast server, you have the West Coast server, and you know, and everything in between. And I don't know, that to me it takes away a lot from the gameplay. I mean, I do think that Catmerk makes a good point, though. It does scratch an itch. I mean, the gameplay is not completely awful. I mean, in the moment-to-moment part of the shooter gameplay, the map design isn't completely terrible. You know, it's just, I don't know. You'll have people that are gonna like it, obviously, and people will move to
There's
it.
still some very terrible maps.
You mean like Manus Peak? Oh wait, sorry, we're talking about a different game, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
we are.
We fixed
There's-
it. It's better now.
There's
Okay.
an underground base with just capture points outside and the spawn points in the underground portion. So the only way to try to defend your capture point is to go on the surface where every single tank on hillsides pointing down into the base is pointing at.
So,
that- I
which
remember
of the
that.
maps
That's
and dust
terrible.
does that not sound like?
That sounds familiar.
This base has no cover on the outside.
Like, none. At
Or-
all.
Dust.
And the only thing that it has is like a knee-high wall that prevents a tank from getting in. That's about it.
Okay,
Sounds like dust.
what you're describing, like this is what I hear when everybody's talking about
Hey.
PlanetSide 2. If you took like both Dust, the current version, mind you, the current version of Dust, and what I think is like, I haven't played obviously the current version of PlanetSide 2, on PS4. Okay, so if you took those, I would say they're probably in the same tier of, a lot of potential but mediocre, but for different reasons. That's exactly what you're describing to me. And it's not about one game necessarily being truly better or worse than the other at this point. From what I can tell, it's literally about what things do you value more, or are you willing to put up with more, depending on the game. The thing that PlanetSide 2 ultimately will provide that Dust cannot provide is the ability to play with bigger numbers and organize with bigger numbers, like what you had in Mag. That is probably the biggest thing that you can have where you have a clear difference, because you can fence with this isn't balanced or that isn't balanced, this doesn't feel good, that feels better all day long, but you're really talking about two fairly comparable games other than the raw number of players on the field at one time.
Yeah.
I regret not getting into Mag when it was still a thing.
Arguably, when I've been playing PlanetSide 2 lately, the numbers on them they're so embarrassing to even mention, because that's why 1.4 can actually field more players than an entire continents can in PlanetSide 2 during the times I usually play.
Yeah, but
Damn.
isn't that very dependent on your server? And all
Do
that
we
kind of
want
good
to
shit?
mention the
Last time I
interesting-
played, it was 6 blues and 3 reds and 2 purples
That's sad.
Okay.
That is sad.
on all of Amrish.
One thing worth mentioning probably is actually what the Sony Online Entertainment CEO has been saying over the last couple of days. Because he's been talking this week, he's been providing some real talk about PlanetSide 2's finances, which I thought was pretty interesting. They actually said that it's just been in the last couple of months they've been able to kind of break even on operating costs for PlanetSide 2, and that they've been losing money on that game for over 2 years.
What? How?
And that's with
How?
even being as popular as it is, in that it actually gets like a lot of coverage in blogs and stuff. It's been losing money for 2 years.
That's actually not uncommon though for a free-to-play game. To not
Well, you
actually
mentioned
start...
specifically operational costs, not the loan development.
Yeah, they were specifically saying they just started breaking even like on their month-to-month costs versus income.
Those servers are probably expensive. 4,000. How many players is that per server that they can handle?
2,000 per continent.
Yeah, 2,000. A server that can handle 2,000 players must be pretty good.
Although how much they can handle and how many they're actually handling is apparently different.
Dude, you really don't want to start talking about like trying to compare usage
PTO.
numbers of any other game to Dust. And you and I both know that.
Well, hey, Iron Wolf just said they had like 10 players on, man.
CCPPR.
Well, that's a smart server. I don't know about anybody else's.
How many servers do they have?
They started with like 15. They're down like to 6 now, I think. And they're talking about merging my server again, so that's
I
gonna be
thought
fun.
it was 5.
Because if they're getting like 10 players, they might as well just have one server if that's how many they're getting on one server of yours.
Well, my server's been considered always unpopular for whatever reason.
Maybe
Because you're there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Hey, I don't suck that bad with the Phoenix.
That little shit IVS.
Currently, there are 5 servers: U.S.
See, I
West,
told you.
U.S. East, 2 EU servers, and 1 AU server, 1 Australian server. Which I think we know a certain game that no longer has an Australian server at all.
Black Light.
I will say this, just like as I'm sitting here thinking through this, I actually would like them to take all those servers that they shut down in Australia and move those fucking things to South America, because I'm about sick of firing up Dust and then getting like a lag. Like this is like I've actually seen more lag in the last month than I've seen probably the entire time I've been playing, outside of like some PC matches or back when the Glente research facility is really bad. Like I'm actually starting to notice more routine lag and latency for, the only thing I can think of is it's from the large influx of South American players. I'm almost at the point I'd like them to have their own server.
It's kind of weird. I never, like, even when people were complaining about lag, not frame rate.
Yeah.
Frame rate I always had problems with, but lag, I never seem to have the issues that other people are reporting.
Yeah, same here. In terms of latency issues, I've not really had much of any issue with latency issues.
It's very uncommon. That's the reason I say that, is because like if you asked me this like a couple weeks ago, I'd have been very much in the same boat. Like it was rare for me to experience something that was truly aggravating.
I always assumed that it's because of my geographical location that was unusual.
I would note that Rattati actually posted a few days ago that one of the things that they were looking into was cloud hosting of battle servers, which would potentially change up the server structure and how they can work with it. But
Wait, could you repeat that? I missed that.
There was a
cloud-based servers.
Yeah, and that would offer a lot of flexibility to them. But I honestly don't think a lot of the lag is server based. It's definitely, there's geographic components. I think there's definitely components in terms of different PS3s and how those PS3s, like, they're people act like one of the console perks is that they're all all the hardware is the same. The hardware's not the same. There's like 8 different versions of the PS3, and then they're in various states of age or disrepair.
There's also a thing where some
not even talking
hardware,
about the SSDs, which do make a huge difference as well.
Some hardware, like there's a small variation between each CPU, even if it's the same architecture, even if the same everything. When manufacturing, there's always small imperfections. So some PS3s are actually slightly stronger than others.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors involved in that. Just because it's, like we talk about computer cooling and stuff like that, but PS3s need cooling too. And if you have like a different airflow situation, you can have different performance between your PS3s. And I think that Dust, whether you want to say it's because of what it can do or because of inefficiencies in coding, it pushes the PlayStation 3 to the absolute edge. And I think that some people's PS3s just can't handle it.
Well, I mean, but at the same time, performance isn't the same thing as latency, and I think a lot of people have will they will misunderstand what's going on with their system, whether they're having a latency issue or whether they're having an actual performance issue. That was a huge deal back in the early days of Planetary Conquest when CCP actually ran like tests with Player Corps, because it was trying to figure out what was performance issues. Memory leaks and that sort of thing, and what was actually latency issues. And in a lot of cases, the issues in Planetary Conquest ended up being performance issues with memory leaks and also with voice chats and stuff like that, and not actually directly related to latency issues in terms of server locations and stuff like that.
Also, Dust surprisingly handled latency pretty well. When I remember I had a PC fight against Nyan Sun, and it was on their server, so I was pretty laggy, but Dust handled it pretty well from my memory. Like, I didn't have issues with hit detection, I didn't have issues with movement. It was surprising.
I merked out with some corp I cannot remember, and we was fighting some Brazilian corp in PC. It was actually pretty good. I had actually no lag. I was surprised. I was like,
no, I had lag, it's just that I couldn't.
No, I had zero lag. That was so weird.
Just that it didn't affect me in actual combat. It worked pretty well.
I was actually really surprised that I had no lag, because I was like, this is a Brazilian corp. They're in Brazil. I'm not lagging at all.
Wait, where do you live, Godin?
I live in Atlanta. Why?
Well, because you're going to be...
Impossible.
If you're playing someone in Brazil, they're on the North American server too.
Which
and
is
you're
located.
you're closer to it than they are.
Yeah,
it's not that close.
It's in Austin, Texas. I'm pretty sure is where the main battle servers for US are located.
It would still take me a couple of days to drive all the way to Brazil versus driving to, say, Texas.
Dude, you can get there in one day. I used to drive.
I could get there in like 10 hours.
Easily. Yeah.
Easily.
No, but anyway, like I didn't mean to get it into a huge discussion there, but I guess it's one of those I've been seeing just minor issues more and more and more, and the only real change is an influx of a growing minority of the player group that are from, I think, South Central America. I suspect maybe Mexico, but it's definitely South Central America. So there may actually be zero linkage between those, that anecdotal experience. But I've kind of looked around on the forums. I've noticed a lot of other people calling that out. I don't know if it's like kind of just this sort of like, urban myth, but I could kind of see where it might be a possibility. I just don't know enough about the
it actually kind of makes sense, because think about it. PS4 has been out. PS3s are probably getting real cheap, so people down there can afford it more.
Well, that's a pretty common experience. That's one of the reasons that you see games will get popular in different parts of the world at different times in their life cycle. So large chunks of Asia, particularly in Korea, for example, they will be about a year and a half behind in the game market. Now, they have a very strong game market on their own of regionalized games, but things that are real big over in North America, particularly things like this, where you have like MMO style activity, they actually gravitate to different parts of the world at different times in their life cycle. And you can find a lot of examples of that. But
Terra.
Yeah, that's not a bad one. Or hell, even StarCraft. But that's not uncommon but as the price points for things drop, it becomes much more available to folks in different parts of the world. That's not evil. It's just how it is. So maybe perhaps that's what it is the PS3 is, like the player counts of folks from Europe, Australia, North America. Yeah. Well, no, it's not about poor people. It's just about its relative availability of the systems.
Nah, I'm joking. I'm just making a poor peasant joke.
Ah, okay.
Ew.
Carry on then. Where's Victor when you need him?
Fucking Victor.
All right. Well, I think we've hit on pretty much every topic we wanted to tonight. So
We have, and then some.
absolutely, and that's a good thing. So let's go ahead and
Excellent.
hit shout outs, and we're going to start at the top just like we opened it up. So Cat Merc, if you can throw a shout out to us, brother.
Shout out to all of my cat minions.
Excellent. Okay, Godin.
Shout out to all my fish minions and Zerd, the sexy tentacle man.
I'm
terrified.
not going to go near that. Okay, Iron Wolf.
Shout out to Cat Merc for not sending his cat minions to kill me this week.
Okay.
It will
Alright.
happen eventually.
Kane.
And just a shout out to the Dust community for sticking with this crazy game for so long.
Oh, well said. Pokey.
Crazy game for crazy people.
Shout out to Godin for finally being on the show. It's good to hear your voice and actually have you on here.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Godin, are you going to remind him you were an OSG for a hot minute and you actually spoke to him?
I did actually remember him being an OSG. I didn't know if I actually spoke to you on the comms, though.
You have several times, actually.
I was there and I remember it.
You can't expect me to pay attention. Come on.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, you were only the CEO. I'm just
I
saying.
actually talked to Godin like a really, really long time ago because he's in my local channel.
I am? What?
I think so.
No. I've never seen you
From
in
like
there.
from like an age.
I
and a half
remember
ago.
local chat, and I don't remember seeing you at all. Not
Really?
once.
Okay,
No.
that could be crazy. It's okay.
Maybe I was flying around and then
Maybe it was a different.
saw
Godin.
you.
I don't know.
it was probably me. Might have been flying around and then stopped in your system and started talking to
No,
you.
it was a Dust player. I'm just trying to think if it was you or someone else then maybe. I don't know.
Okay. On that
Okay.
note, it's Razel. Shout outs.
Yeah, I'm gonna give my shout out to my friend who goes in Eve under the name Mavra for coming up with simple but brilliant solutions to everyday problems that completely escape me.
Dang, I was gonna give that shout out to that guy that tried to shoot me. I just remembered that.
Too
Shout
late.
out to the guy who shot me.
Okay. I guess I will throw a shout out to, let's see, what random dude. Hang on. Let me look at the Biomassed chat channel.
Shout out to the janitor.
Ooh, okay, here we go. All right, so shout out to John Ripper and Jadek Menaheim. And
Ripper's
any
my
other
buddy.
lucky winners? Hinox, big shout out to Hinox. Bam, Havoc, the Baconator. And I'll call that done for shout outs. So I think we're going to bring this episode to a close, guys. Really good discussion. Appreciate you guys coming on. And for all of you out there in the listening audience, I'm putting the call out now. We would like some new and different points of view and topics. So we're interested in you guys contacting us for getting on the show. So if you have any interest in coming on and having like an open mic day or just being a part of the discussion, you're more than welcome to come on. Just contact myself, Pokey, or Soraya. We're just trying to open it up right now to get a lot of different voices from the community on and kind of exchange some ideas, because I think Dust generally is in a good spot right now. The community's in a good spot. Who knows what spot CCP's in? They might be fucking dead as disco and we just don't know it yet, or they might be literally sitting on a winning lottery ticket and they're going to drop something huge in about a month on us. So we don't know, but we are enjoying the time that we have as a player community right now.
Well, two of us know.
Well, I don't even, yeah, sometimes I don't even know about them guys, but yeah. So with that, I think we're gonna go ahead and call this a night and get a hold of us if you have any topics, feedback for the show, or you're interested